What's up, guys? This is Boondocks, and today is part 3 of Can They Support, in which we're going to be looking at Banshee, who, in all honesty, is pretty much a pure support frame. But unlike a lot of frames in the game that tend to focus on defensive type abilities or buffs to your teammates, hers are primarily debuffs to enemies, and by doing debuffs, damage multiplication. So, she does gain some pretty decent benefits off of Syndicate mods. And the first one I'm going to be talking about is Resonance. So, her number 2 ability is called Sonar. What Sonar does is it's going to open up enemies to weak points. These weak points, when hit, are going to have a ridiculous damage multiplier based on your power strength. Now, as far as Resonance is concerned, when you kill an enemy by hitting the weak point, it's going to transfer more weak points to surrounding enemies for the remainder of the killed enemy's duration. So this can cause just casting Sonar once, maybe twice, and then you can actually continually spread the Sonars, the weak points, by just killing an enemy. And it will spread to any new enemies that have moved into the area and so on. So for starters, I'm going to want to have some decent duration and then increased strength and stretch for increased range. Feel free to try to mod for a little bit of efficiency as well, so that way you can use the ability more than once. But one thing I can definitely say here is, with my current setup, I have more than enough duration at 47 seconds, and in all honesty, a critical multiplier could be much, much higher. At 6.5, by increasing my power strength, it could go that much more powerful. And in all honesty, Resonance, in my opinion, isn't that great because you should be able to just cast another Sonar whenever new enemies appear anyway. So you might want to think about dropping the Constitution and Resonance in place of a Transient Fortitude if you're feeling like your duration's already good enough. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave my build as is and go fight a lower level enemy at about level 22 Corrupted Heavy Gunner. And I'm going to be using my Marlock, which, as you can see, has no damage mods on it. So this is just to show, like, hey, if you were to have a Banshee as a low-level player, you could then go and kill enemies and buff your entire team for killing the enemies relatively easily. So as we can see, it's just going to be one at level 22, and this is because I'm not a really good Banshee player, so I don't really know how to move around too much with her, but that's not the point of these videos. The point of these videos is to show, like, hey, you can support. So for starters, one thing you're going to want to do is make sure that your energy on your frame and therefore your abilities is pretty high, so that way you can make it so that the weak points on enemies are a little bit more clear. By high, I mean high contrast. And as you can see, once I got a crit onto the weak point, they pretty much insta-died. So high critting weapons such as the Soma Prime right here would definitely be the way to go. For the follow-up build, I'm going to be talking about another Syndicate mod called Sonic Fracture. And basically this is going to act similar to Ash's ability to remove enemy armor. So once again, because this is only 70% removed for 8 seconds, I'm going to want to increase my power strength to at least 143 to bring it up to 100% armor removed. Now, additionally, my power duration will greatly benefit the amount of time that the armor is removed as well. So I've kind of modded for 145 power strength by using Intensify and Power Drift, and then tried to keep everything relatively decent as well. What would really be nice, however, is if I had the Exilus mod spot open to move Power Drift up there, and instead put in a Stretch to therefore have a little bit more range, and therefore make it so that your Sonic Boom would actually hit more enemies easily. So because of that, it's going to be a little bit hard. I'm going to have to get closer to enemies. And additionally, Sonic Boom is also just a good controlling ability on its own. It acts like a Sonicer without having the Sonicer equipped. Basically, you're going to cast a Sonic Boom in front of you and pretty much knock down every enemy in the game, and then like the bigger enemies get staggered. And while it doesn't do too much damage, the fact that it does have that knockdown is pretty ridiculous. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the stretch on there, and instead I need to use the space for power drift, so therefore my range isn't all that good. So this is a good controlling ability by itself, but as soon as we get an enemy or two with some decent armor, such as the Corrupted Heavy Gunners, in which, you know, I'll pick 3 this time, and let's up the enemy level to, say, 55, because I don't want to get lit up and instant-downed. And it's going to be slightly hard to show this off here, because one problem with this map and the fact that Sonic Boom has Ragdoll is it'll often Ragdoll enemies off. But as you can see, he instantly got his armor removed, and now he's an easy target, whereas this enemy that still has the armor takes a little bit longer to kill, though I got a headshot in there too with my Argon Scope and started getting red crits. So, oh well. As you can also see, I'm not a good Banshee player. I don't know how to fucking move on her to stay alive. Her last ability that I actually consider being support would be Silence. And the reason I don't count Soundquake as being a supporting ability is, well, it's kind of annoying to begin with. In order to use it, it's a channeled ability, but you're stuck in place, like, you can't move. And what this is doing, it's knocking down any enemies in range, or at least staggering them, but it's only going to hit enemies that are on the ground, so any enemies that are flying are totally unaffected. But her ability, Silence, has some interesting things that you might want to think about when it comes to using. So for beginners, when you first come into an area that has an enemy unaffected by Silence, you're going to stun them. And then they're going to be unable to hear anything around them, whether that's other enemies screaming when you kill them, gunfire, or even alarms going off. They're just going to ignore you. So this is going to actually turn Banshee into a interesting stealth frame. As long as you cast Silence from with a high enough range on it, you can then move into an area, stun enemies initially, get 1 or 2 kills off real quick, then the rest of the enemies are going to be half retarded and not be able to see where you are unless they look at you directly. When you combine this with a blind ability from Mirage or from Excalibur, now enemies can't hear or see you, and they're useless. So you can either mod this for having great range or negative range. And the reason you might want to think about negative range is, one thing you can do, stun an enemy, then move away from them and walk back in, and you'll stun them again. But if you stay close to them, they only get stunned once. And I'm going to go show that off real quick. And because of that system, I've decided to go with a Steel Charge and think of Banshee more as a melee on the move type character with the stunning ability to help support your team. And additionally, every time you hit an enemy with Savage Silence, they're going to be increased to finisher damage. So that should work out pretty well. And I'm just going to show off the stun really quick. Go exit. Go back. What? That was weird. It wasn't backing out for me. So once again, we're going to just drop the level down so that way it's a little bit easier to talk about and visually show without getting wrecked. But this ability is not channeled, and there he's stunned. If I walk out of the area and then walk back in, he gets stunned again. But if you look, if I stay in the area, when he becomes unstunned, he won't get stunned again until I move out and then move back in. So I could actually see using the the Silence ability as a very like on the move support type thing, where you're just kind of zigzagging in and out between enemies, constantly stunning them and making it so that your team can finish them off afterwards. It's an interesting concept which I would love to, try out sometime. And in all honesty, I think that you can turn that into a pretty good supporting ability. The only issue is, in order to use that, you have to drop your range pretty drastically, which in turn negatively affects your other abilities. So while you can still use Silence to stun enemies with a long-range Sonic Boom or long-range sonar, it's not going to be able to perma-stun them like I was able to do right there by zigzagging in and out. So it's something to think about, and you can play with Banshee in a lot of different ways. and make her a very interesting support. So I'm going to try to play her a little bit and see if I actually enjoy it. And I definitely recommend you try it out. So, can she support Verdict? Yes, she can. And until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and peace.